So, in this episode of Unfinished, I am delighted to be welcoming my friend Jenni Emery. We first met when I interviewed her for an article about transitioning from being in law to being something else, not in law. But since then, she's moved out of law and into leadership advisory, coaching, writing. She writes beautifully, and we've become very great friends. And I knew she would be on for the project of talking about being unfinished because she is unashamedly so and constantly working on herself. So, Jenni, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
Good. Let's start then with little Jenni. What's something that no one would ever guess about how you grew up? The kind of thing that you don't generally put in your bios or bring out at posh dinner parties.
Being at dinner parties. I was thinking about this and thinking, in some respects, I think I'm an open book. Hence, as you say, being willing to talk to you about
Mm.
everything. But childhood feels so far away in some respects, or at least a working class Scottish, very small, pre-internet, really pre-TV childhood does. And I think that the sort of main trait of that people wouldn't guess about as much is probably particularly the deeply religious aspect. And I mean religious rather than spiritual, and
Mm.
very tight and constraining and kind of all defining that was. And how really I spent, well, it's given me this lovely, you talked about my love of words, right? It's given me this rich sort of heritage of words and songs. And whenever somebody says something, I've got a reference for it. But it also just gave me terror, right? All the time about the badness in me and the badness in other people and the badness in the world. It was a strange mashup at that time of very traditional Church of Scotland kind of Presbyterianism, but also the kind of the first wave of some of the more wacky evangelical stuff from the US coming in. So things like barcodes on food, we were told they were the number of the beast and that they had a 60
Whoa.
in them. Stuff like that, like really weird stuff that now with hindsight, I'm going, that was so weird.
Completely mad.
Um,
Yes.
Yeah. So that context, I think, is a thing that people wouldn't guess just how much in the grip of that for a really long time I was.
So that's fascinating. And I knew a little bit about that of you, but not that much. And I'm wondering to what extent that terror and your relationship with it, and perhaps your desire to get away from it, to what extent that was playing and what else was really on your mind when you first set out into your career. Again, not the version that all the law firms you've worked for would tell us, but what was really on your mind
What
when
was
you
really
were.
on my mind? Oh, and that's so interesting because you sort of said terror and desire to get away from it. And maybe another way of thinking about that is kind of complying and being good and rebelling and being bad.
180 degree
You
stuff.
do
Yeah,
know that in me, those two energies are really strong,
yes.
like simultaneously being,
Mm,
head girl and the baddest girl.
yes.
Um, so when I was beginning work, right, so sort of immediately post university in the days when the kind of, the milk round just sort of scooped people up into the city, I had come off the back of a really bad girl phase at the end of school. I had a very bad for me and for everyone else boyfriend, and I'd kind of somehow, by the skin of my teeth, made it away from home and through university, and I had met a lovely boy. And I think the best way of understanding what I was doing was just trying to outperform being good in every way. Right. So I was like, I will get a job in the city in a really good law firm and I will get married. Both be good and be really fast and first about it. I'll get married before everybody else does, and we'll buy a nice flat in North London, and we'll have dinner parties, and I'll be the first to have a baby. So I think what was on my mind for that season at least was about being very good and delivering on all of the expectations. I'm pausing because I'm like the expectations that I had of me or the
I was
expectations
wondering, I was going to ask you,
of me.
who were you competing with?
I don't think I was
Yourself or
competing.
others?
I was proving
Mhm.
probably mostly to my dad. that I carried quite a lot of guilt around how miserable I'd made them um, in the sort of the previous season. So I think I was trying to show that I was nothing to see here. You can rely on me. I'm back on track. I think there was a lot of that going on for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of
Wow.
decades later, let's wax over exactly how many. You're no longer working in law. You're working in all kinds of different ways, but generally with people, on people. And I wonder what it is that you really love about what you do now, and even the hard bits, what keeps you loving it?
Even the hard bits. It's hard not to be gushy at this point, right? So you know that I love work generally. Maybe we'll talk about that a bit later. I particularly love this work for a number of reasons. I suppose the first, unashamedly, is that this business that I've been building for the last 2 or 3 years is mine, right? And so for a long time, I was in an executive career and working for someone else and putting my shoulder to the wheel for something big, and that's been great. But there's a completely different delight in, and I think a lot of the sort of creative energy that sometimes goes elsewhere for me with writing or poetry or making beautiful homes for people or whatever else. Um, it feels more tethered into my work now that this is a business that I'm building for myself. So I love the very fact that I'm making something for me, the sort of the creative energy that comes from that with but but that I'm doing that with other people because the joy of being in relationships. So there are 7 of us in the business and we are I love that you introduced me as a friend and then we had all the work stuff too. But it's the same with those people who I work with, that we really enjoy each other and we because we all love our discipline and the coaching work and the leadership advisory work, we make each other better. And so I did a full offsite with a lovely client earlier this week with one of my colleagues. We did it together. And he does stuff in the room that I can't do. And I dare say I do stuff in the room that he wouldn't think to do. And then between us, we produce something that's amazing. So I love that. But above all, I cannot believe that I get to make a living sitting in a room with other people and giving them the gift of my attention and then receiving so much in return in terms of trust and seeing how people think and how they tell their stories and how they come up with how people are so resourceful, right? And they just, you know, coaching done well is just this kind of context within which they can unlock all of that in themselves. And I love that. It is ridiculous that people get to do this for a living.
Isn't it just? It's a double, if not multiple whammy, isn't it? You get to do
Oh,
something amazing and make lovely money with it.
make lovely money with it, and hopefully, most of the time, make a really astonishing impact um,
Exactly. Exactly.
through
And an
through
impact
being
which
able other
tends to
people to do.
cascade for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Of course, there are always bits of our work that we don't love as much, or bits of life that we don't love as much, the boring bits, the thankless bits. How do you meet them with grace, if you do?
If I do, probably avoidance first, and then grace. What am I not good at? Or what do I not love? It's really interesting. So some of the stuff that so things like admin, ostensibly really simple things, right? Just being organized, knowing where you put that piece of paper that has that important number on it that you need again, um, and then sort of good financial hygiene and stuff. I've found myself and still find myself really balking at some of that. And some of that's just simple. It's a bit boring. I'd rather write a poem. Um, but I think it's also some of that stuff is where I don't know, maybe we're going to go here, the sort of grungier fear, the residual fear of getting things wrong or making a mistake or being unwise with money or scarcity or all of those things play. So that wasn't really your question. How do I meet it? Actually, with a bit of discipline. Um, I have a kind of midlife love affair with a bit of rigor and a bit of routine and a bit of
Ah,
your bum on the chair,
yeah.
spend an hour, get this shit done, stop, you know, indulging yourself in being kind of, I don't know, avoidant, basically.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And I do wonder what effect age has on this. I heard a beautiful woman called Mary Shakun speak the other day. She's over 80. She is $1 million coach. She only coaches people for $1 million or more. And one
Oh,
of her big things is you just jolly well get on with it. You know,
mhm.
you don't want to have that difficult meeting. Well, I'll carry you on in and you will jolly well go and do it. She's very no nonsense. And in the end, we can um, introspect and belly button gaze and everything else. But whether we take a teeny tiny step or a big one, that first step into sitting down in front of the admin or whatever is never much fun, is it? But it's
No,
the jolly well getting on with it.
it's the jolly Rocket. I
Makes it
love that. And
okay.
oh, that's she sounds wonderful. That I don't know. I keep sort of thinking of possible left turns we could take in this conversation, but that whole piece, that for me, that's the voice also of my upbringing in a good way, right? So
Yeah,
that kind of working class Calvinist,
yeah. It's very
you
black and
hustle,
white,
you
right?
work, you
Although
crack
we were.
on, right? You don't indulge. And I find myself often almost feeling like I have a foot in both worlds, right? A very
Mm.
looser, more generative, inquiring, forgiving, capacious, spiritual, exploratory world, and the energy that is like, look, this is hard. You're just going to turn up and do it.
Indeed.
And integrating those in this season of life is fun.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Well, you're very worked on. So, it would be easy to imagine that there are no blind spots, no recurring weaknesses in all the things that you say, do, and be in life. But what's something you still wrestle with that you're aware of, but it still shows up like a bad penny?
Oh, yes. So lots of stuff that's a similar flavor to what we've just been discussing. So
Mm.
much, yes, worked on, but the more you, like anything, you sort of peel the onion, the more you realize there is to go, right? I have, how can I make this clear? That kind of avoidance trait, right? The fear, actually, it's really interesting that we started with sort of fear in childhood. That kind of, so what I almost did then was that energy, almost like a sort of a dog that doesn't want to go for a walk or a horse, like sort of shy of a fence, right? There's this
Mm.
thing that I do sometimes where I slightly pull back at the last minute, and it's terrible as a leader. Terrible because it's not any fun, but it's really confusing to people because so I'm thinking both in my kind of history as a leader in a bigger organization where people are really taking their lead from you, but also just in terms of how you kind of prosecute and execute and deliver a business or work or anything to be for, what happens? I get flabby and avoidant and I lose the opportunity for cut through and clarity and the gift of that to people because I let this kind of fear come in and it sort of shows up as a sort of looseness, like, oh, okay, I'll just hold that lightly. I don't really care. And then I
Mm.
retreat from things. And I know that sounds a little bit, well, it does sound a bit amorphous. Um, but that means, so how does that show up? It means that I'll be engaging with somebody and then disappear for a little bit, or I'll not meet a deadline on something quite unexpectedly because everything looks like it was going
Mm.
fine, or I won't make the challenge that your wonderful 80-year-old woman that you were talking about it sounds like would always make because I'll sort of balk at it. And so I under deliver. I was coaching somebody yesterday and she sort of said at one point, I think I'm actually much more capable than I admit I am. And I think maybe it's a little bit like that, that sometimes I just don't punch through and it really pisses me off.
Yeah, because you are otherwise the queen of clarity, the queen of precision, the queen of sharpness.
I
Um,
can do it, but
yeah,
very often I
exactly.
don't. Yeah.
Mm. What triggers it?
Triggers it. What gets me out of it, which so that tells me what the trigger is being able to get out of my own head, right? And to think about how I'm serving whatever, the person in front of me, the
Yeah.
context in front of me, or anything else. If I get too much into it's about me and there's some kind of judgment on me or what might other people think or what's the story for
Mm-mm.
me and who am I to? So lots of lots of what's going on when I am triggered is quite a young voice and quite old energy, you know. I don't know what triggers it. It could be anything. I suspect it's worse when I'm really basic stuff. Tired, not exercising enough, not
Yeah,
eating well,
great that.
all that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, good. I mean, thinking about other types of insights, you've had this career in which you were a lawyer, then you had other functions within law firms, then and then you've done so many different things. You've been a leader probably naturally since you were a child. Um, I'm wondering about game-changing moments. When did you get a real click of clarity and insight that you were in the right place doing the right thing and that leadership was working for you?
Ooh, did I get a click of clarity? I'm thinking about COVID, right? And I'm thinking about so during COVID, the seat my bum was on when the music stopped for COVID and we all
Mm,
cracked on because I was the
mm,
chief people officer at Arup then, a big
yeah,
design engineer from a big global firm. And nobody knew what to do. I think it's easy to forget now, but in that first week of lockdown, if you Googled sort of crisis management, what to do, there was some stuff on BP Deepwater Horizon and some stuff on reputation management and really nothing else at
yeah.
all. And so, and I was a human in a so mean. I was a emotionally articulate human in a boardroom full of engineers. Right?
Absolutely. What a
Um,
contrast.
and so we were all deeply human, but just maybe not very good at talking about the human stuff.
Mm,
I love them all very much. Um, and so the sort of the way that sort of the early days of that kind of crisis fell was me just having to be very visible and very so lots of this stuff being on a screen, doing something live to
mm,
lots and lots of to thousands of people globally and just tell them what was going to happen and then be quite responsive and in the moment. Um, and the but again, back to the energy of just do it, right? The courage and confidence that came in the tailwind of having to do the hard thing while terrified and then occupying the space that you had kind of made for yourself was incredible. And if I think about if I remember myself as a leader or kind of picture myself showing up in my life before then, if all of the energy feels very here, right? Like I almost feel like I was still wearing heels. I probably was. So I feel very tall and quite tottery and quite in my head. And then if I think about all of my leadership in that period and since, it's like my entire center of gravity fell, right? So I feel I'm in flat shoes and my energy's in my like sort of solar plexus down.
mm,
That
mm.
mover, what does that mean? I think the
It
click is
means you're
that,
grounded.
yes. So it's the sort of knowing what you know and trusting it
Mm,
um,
mm,
shift, while also still like, as you know, incessantly pouring more shit into the into my head by reading everything and thinking about things all the time. But I think that's the biggest shift I can point to in my leadership, which was
mm,
sort of thrust upon me rather than anything that
mm.
I.
There's probably a book in this called From Heels to Sneakers, but let's revisit that over a glass of wine sometime later. Conversely, what's a moment you still cringe about? Some time when you failed or let your own standards slip?
Oh God, so many. Oh, as soon as you say cringe, like my back goes, ugh. Oh, when I was when I was really young, when I hadn't long stopped being a lawyer and was doing a
Mm,
job still inside a law firm, I was kind of the chief of staff for the managing partner. So I was really junior
mm,
doing my MBA, but I had access to all of these rooms where all sorts of brilliant, an amazing job, but where all sorts of decisions were being made. And a
mm,
decision was made that affected a partner I had worked very closely with and went against him. He was a good friend and somebody I really cared about. And a decision was made and it was going to have to be communicated to him. And I told him ahead of the formal communication process. In my head, it can't have been quite this way. In my head, I kind of ran from the boardroom, got in the lift, went downstairs, walked into his office and told him. And it probably wasn't quite like that, but it was
yeah.
very immediate. And it was awful. It was an awful thing to do to him. It was horrible news for him, but he absolutely deserved the respect of being told by the right people in the right way. And I kind of it's like a slow motion reel in my in my head, the kind of the devastation on his face and then the kind of the horror on my part that it wasn't the right thing to have done. And I probably think about that about once a week. Um,
Oh,
because so much of my job now involves knowing stuff
mm,
and holding it. And so much of my job as a chief people officer involves knowing stuff that's hard and holding it and understanding that yeah, it's sort of sloppy thinking to think that the kind thing is to be transparent and tell everybody everything all the
mm,
time. It's such a
mm,
responsibility that comes with knowing
yeah,
what to do with information. But it was
yeah,
yeah, it was such a bad thing to do.
yeah. Sounds as though it was the kind of decision, nevertheless, that felt easy to make while you were making it probably more all about you than.
Oh God, it was all about me.
Right?
I feel
Exactly.
so uncomfortable with this thing.
Yeah,
This thing is horrible. I'm just going to
exactly.
shove it onto somebody else. But also, I could have justified if you'd asked me in the moment, I would have justified about this is so unfair on him. He's my
Yeah,
friend. I should
completely.
tell him the truth. All of
Yeah,
that. Speak truth.
I'm the hero. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It was awful. And it was all about me and my own discomfort. Yeah,
So what are you working on? Inner, outer projects, but the real stuff, the honest stuff.
honest stuff. Um, outer, I'm trying to write another book, which I'm having a lot of fun with, but not spending enough time on. Um, and working on my upper arms at the gym. I'd like a more defined shoulder. Those are the outers.
Show us.
Uh, there were so many women this summer in London wearing those lovely cutaways and there's just like this beautiful kind of yeah, that's what I want. That's what I'm working on. What am I actually working on? In my coaching practice, being deepening my awareness of this system that people are within. So working sort of with and on an individual or a team, but really trying to sort of coach the spaces in between and the relationships and the system and the context, which is stretching and hard and fun. Um, for myself, being bolder, owning my ambition a bit more. Um, maybe some of what we were talking about earlier, where you were asking me where I'm not optimizing that
Mm.
being I think as my relationship with ambition has changed a bit in the last couple of years. I used to I'm laughing because you know this only too well. Sort of throw myself up into against impossible challenges and think I could probably change the world in the next fortnight or so if I just punch
I
through hard
seem to
enough.
remember some comment that we once made, which would be that we'd have eliminated the patriarchy by lunchtime.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, all of that stuff. Right. Let me at it. I'll configure this for you. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I've sort of shifted a little bit from that, but
Mm,
but the sort of what but having the maximum impact that I can have by being the most kind of realized version of
Mm,
myself. Even if the context within which that is happening is quite intimate and small.
yeah.
So being willing to own ambition, and that might be about, we talked about money earlier, which I was like, oh, that's bold. See,
Mm,
that
mm,
makes me think it's okay to talk about
yeah.
business and making it successful, but also just knowing that I am not holding anything back through fear, holding lots of stuff back judiciously, as just discussed, but not retreating from anything. That's what I'm working on.
All right. So, to push you further, what's something you're still scared to work on? Something
I don't like this.
might be even to mention it might be a stretch.
Am I still scared to work on? Some of you've brought this full circle. Anyone would think you knew what you were doing. Um, some of the early stuff, my relationship with my mum in particular, and that's in lots of ways lovely, but there's lots of insight and stuff in there that I could still get out, but it would have to be a bit pokey. Um, and some of the legacy of those early years, alongside all the gifts, that is the sort of the fear of scarcity
Mm.
and relationship with money and that kind of stuff. Um, the stuff that and you know, am I still yes, I'm scared to work on it, but it would make me I'd be disappointed if I didn't work on it
I'd
because
be
I can see
disappointed if you wouldn't be disappointed.
because I can see the opportunity on the other side of it, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
But
Yeah,
yeah, those are the bits that make when you ask me make my tummy clench.
excellent. Okay, well, let's unclench your tummy and go to something a little lighter. What's your favorite way to begin a meaningful conversation? The move that you find actually opens people up.
Oh, that's a good question. I've started, which I think is a classic middle-aged lady thing if we're in this zone, which might not always lead to a meaningful conversation. I've started to be really generous with compliments, like with strangers. So that
Yeah,
ability to go, I love that coat on you. It looks
yes,
amazing. When people have done
yeah.
that to me, it makes your day. So I've started doing a bit more of that and a bit more of I got a long train journey recently. Somebody was sort of reading a book, but not sort of going, excuse me, can I ask you how is it? I was like, so I've read that. What do you think of it? Right, just go straight in. So does that always lead to a meaningful conversation? No, but I'm really enjoying those opportunistic encounters. And I think if you do them, you got to be really crazy not to tip over into crazy. Um, but if you do them with a real warmth and genuineness, it can be really transformational. As for more meaningful conversations, the first thing I thought of was actually posture. Before I thought of a phrase, it's like posture, like tucking your feet up under you. Do you mean that sort of if I'm starting in a coach, I've done the small
Hmm.
talk and stuff in the chat, and then
You're
if you
getting
just
ready. You're on your starting block.
absolutely look like I am here all day, like
Mm.
there was absolutely no hurry, and I am so you're good at that when we're physically in a room together. The way we can occupy two chairs
Mm.
across from each other. I always feel that you have all the time in the world, and you
Yeah.
create by doing that a space where somebody will talk you to. And so maybe I try to do a little bit of
Oh,
that with my
that's
body and
lovely.
everything to start a meaningful
But it's
conversation.
interesting that you mention it because it's not something I've been physically aware of in myself. Therefore, to hear you talking about it, both as something you've seen in me, but also, a conscious gesture that you make is lovely and something I'm going to learn from and take away today for sure. Thank you.
Good. Oh, you're very welcome.
Good, good, good. Now, books. You love them. I love them. You write them. I write them. But that we usually, most of us have one or two tomes that we go back to again and again. It taught us something. We maybe live by it in one way or another. What's yours?
Fine. I was rereading this week a book called The Three Marriages by David White, which I don't even know if it's still in print. So
I'm not
David,
familiar with it. No.
do you know David White?
I'm going to admit in public that I don't. No.
That's okay, because now you've got a whole thing to discover, which is exciting,
Indeed.
right? So
Yes.
David White is I've loved him for years because for ages I felt like he was the only weirdo like me. So he is a poet, but he does lots and lots of work in a business context. I was like, and he does a good job of weaving those two things together. Whereas
Mm, mm-mm.
I have my kind of sonnet writing life and my business.
Yes.
Um, and he's Irish and he's got lots, like an unfeasible amount of hair given his
Mm,
age, and he's got lots of sort of rugged loveliness about him that I enjoy. But this book is quite old, and the three marriages that he talks about in it are your sort of relation, sort of three key relationships. So your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your significant other and sort of life partner, and
mm,
your relationship with your work. Um, and it's that piece in particular. I probably read this book 15, 20 years ago that I keep coming back to and explains so much about me. Or explains so much about me to me, but also about what I think is important. I I hate, and I know for lots of people, work is this, and it's miserable, and I'm not sort of trying to be Pollyanna-ish about it, but our whole sort of default rhetoric of, ugh, work's this kind of necessary evil so that we can enjoy our weekends and
mm,
watch TV, rather than God, I'm such a Calvinist in this whole this whole podcast. Rather than like we're made to be generative and creative, right? And generous with each other and do stuff. And so to care about your work, not just because of that ambition point and because you want to build a cathedral, but because in the doing of work, there's this opportunity to learn about yourself and to encounter other people and to make a difference, and all of that sort of stuff is so central to me. And he articulated that in that book both objectively beautifully
mm.
and for me for the first time. So there's other work. There's a
That.
lovely guy whose name I'm not going to get. I'll come back to you. Who's got this whole sort of movement about business romantics. So people who love, romantics in the proper sense of that word, but who love
Mm,
it in a business context. But it's all the same thing for me, that unashamed, not in a workaholic way. I don't mean that. I'm not in a strivey 70-hour week way, but just
mm.
being really invested in what it is that you're here to do. So that book, and that.
Fantastic. I'm going to go straight off and look him up after.
Well, go straight off and look him up. He's amazing.
Ah, well, maybe the answer to this next question is David White, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Who most inspires you, living or dead? And what sort of model is it that you see in them that you want more of in yourself?
No, it's not David White. Yeah, there are aspects of him that are a little bit annoying. Um, I've got to do better than a middle-aged white guy, right? Um, although, so if you for years and years and years, if you asked me that, the answer would be some version of some gloomy Celtic Irish writer, so like Seamus Heaney, or so yeah, he's very much of my type. Um, no, I'm going to go with like Dolly Parton, somebody like that. So somebody,
Oh, Dolly.
because right, she's joyful and she works hard, and her output is enormous. So she has that kind of creativity and
Mm,
together, which I love. And she uses her platform and her fame and her voice and for massively good impact. The difference that she makes, all of the literary programs and stuff that she runs, and the joy that she has. I Yeah, it's the ability to combine the graft and the joy, I think, that I love. Yeah.
and
Dolly Parton is my greatest living inspiration.
beautiful. I didn't think I would necessarily hear that name on this podcast, but I love it. And I
Oh,
do
now you
love her. I also admire her incredible ability to be very funny and very self-deprecating.
Yeah, right. So she
Mm.
doesn't take anything too so my gloomy Irish Celtic, like, oh
Mm.
God, heavy. The Yeah, the humor and the lightness of
Yes,
it is
indeed.
fabulous. And the ambition. Yeah,
Of
to go
course.
back to what we were talking about
Okay.
earlier, she's
Yeah,
wildly ambitious. She optimizes everything.
indeed.
Yeah, she's great.
Well, I got you up early this morning and you look beautifully turned out. But what's your real morning routine on a good day and
Oh
on
no,
on a realistically normal day?
I love mornings, so you didn't get me up especially early. I'm much better in the morning than I am after about 7 p.m., in which case you
Mm.
would just get some monosyllabic pajama wearing grump. Um, so I do normally get up about 5. Um, I feed the dogs, let them out for a run around. We've got 2 lovely flat-coated retrievers. They're another whole thing. Um, I I do coffee first and then meditation. So I make a coffee, just cafetiere coffee. Love all that. Um, and then I do a guided meditation because I'm most of the time much too squirrely to
Oh,
trust
yeah,
myself.
I know that
Put
feeling.
my bum on the cushion there, so somebody needs to talk me through
Yeah.
it. Bring me back to my breath, all of that stuff. So I do that, and I really, really notice the difference when I don't. I didn't used to do that, but for the last 4 or 5 years, I've had a kind of
Mm.
morning practice that I'm much more productive, but also more pleasant to be around if I do that.
Mhm.
Mm. What else do I do? So then I've got a one of those to-do list apps on my phone that just has everything on it. From defrost a chicken to call the dentist to write the next chapter of my
Mm.
book. So I sit with that for a few minutes and essentially snowplow an unfeasibly large to-do list further into my week so that my day becomes feasible. Something I read recently was about sort of regarding your to-do list as a menu, which I thought was quite nice. I was like, oh, I might do some of these things today, or I might not. Um,
And in any restaurant, there's also the unofficial menu that you can ask about and get
it is.
not on
Yes.
there.
Yes. Oh God, I love that, Bill. That's great. Yeah, okay. So there's the to-do list menu, then there's what I might actually do with my day. But
Mm.
um, sort of slight joking apart for a second, there's a I'm bad at trying to do too much, right? If you ask one of my children to impersonate me, they would say something like, "Oh my God, it's 7 p.m. and there's still 12 things on my to-do list," right? So I'm annoying about it. So I do work hard at the beginning of the day to work out what I think is feasible for the day and what the priorities are so that I'm clear that that helps.
Mm.
Then I do the New York Times puzzles.
Of course.
Um, then, of course, and then I will either, some of them, not all of them, um, do a Peloton or go to the gym or do some writing.
Very nice. Very impressive. What's your guilty pleasure? And why aren't you really feeling that guilty about it?
Oh, I don't really, yeah. What's my guilty pleasure? An ice cold vodka martini with a twist. Um, I don't feel guilty about. Or a Jack Reacher novel on a long journey. Uh,
Oh,
or both. Both would be good.
wouldn't it? Yeah.
I mean,
Nice
right, I
long
don't.
train from London to northern Scotland. You got lots of scope for lots of vodka martinis and lots of Jack.
It's like, yeah, although you don't really want more than 2 vodka martinis.
No.
Definitely.
Though they might put you in the position of saying things you wouldn't otherwise say. I always wonder, we've usually got something that we'd rather not talk about at all. It might be something dark, it might just be something unexplored, but what's one thing you'd rather not talk about on here?
Oh, oh God, I don't know. What could you ask me that I would just be like, no. I'm not, and I immediately went all prim and proper, and I'm not talking about that, Claire. Um, maybe my marriage, maybe my relationship with my mum, only because to tell it, I feel like I'd have to tell it all.
Mm. And in the telling it all, would that be because it would take too long or because it's theirs as well and you wouldn't
I
be
think, yeah, that's a really good point. It's stuff, it's also what stops me from, what stops me. I notice that sometimes if I'm writing or thinking about writing a memoir or a thinly disguised character in a novel, I
Oh
do
yeah.
feel,
Then you have to deal with the people.
yeah, but I do feel that. I think I read an interview with Rachel Cusk, who I admire massively, and her writing's amazing, a couple of years ago, where she was just very, very adamant on that and quite brutal that, her version of the events was, and I do get that, but I don't feel that.
Mm.
I So why wouldn't I be comfortable talking about it? Yeah, maybe because it's partly theirs, maybe because it would take a really long time, and because the stakes on those things feel really high, so the risk of being misunderstood, that sort of,
Mm.
if I tell it wrong, or
Yeah. Safer to keep it inside.
I notice how polished people are sometimes on it. Somebody who's doing a sort of round because they've got a new book out or something, so you hear them on
Mm.
podcasts, and it's not that they're not telling the truth, but they're being very careful. They choose what
Yeah.
they say. And it always strikes me as a really simplified, I don't know what I'm saying. There's something about,
Well, I think what you're actually alluding to is that we are all, it's the reason I started this podcast. We really are all unfinished. And yet we can choose not to show the unfinished bits. We can choose just to show, the perfect backhand slice or whatever it might be. But I'm
yeah, so what would
afraid,
be, yeah, I do love this unfinished word. Um, because you can leave things unfinished forever, right? Like there's
yes, and that might even be the right choice in some cases. Um,
yeah, it might be, but kind of where's the sort of the raw edge or the thing that you could pick?
yeah,
Well, you can leave things unfinished, or you can think something's finished and it's not, and then go back to it.
yes,
Like
definitely.
overworking a poem until you've
Mhm.
kind of killed the last bit of life in it. Like,
I
but
mean,
what's
what's your biggest unfinished bit at this stage? The part of you that's still unfinished, and what's holding you there, good or bad?
oh God, right. My most unfinished bit, and it's sort of marriage, relationship with mum, blah, 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 are all symptomatic of it. The thing I'm actually un well, the thing. One thing I'm actually unfinished around is how to ask for and receive help and care from other people.
Mm.
Um, and that I was talking to my therapist about it. There's a podcast called Other People's Problems where you listen in on therapy sessions.
Mm.
And this season has been really interesting because it's with psychedelics. So it's using sort of psilocybin or MDMA or ketamine
Mm.
or some
Mm, mm,
cannabis
mm,
in a session. Um, and it's beautiful because it's deeply consensual. You hear from the patient or the client and from the therapist and what they're doing, and then you hear snippets
mm,
of. There was one where a woman, American, but in some respects not dissimilar in terms of a sort of quite a ferociously religious upbringing, wanted to work on. Um, she wanted to put her head in the therapist's lap and allow the therapist to stroke her hair, right? And of all the things I've been listening to, I could listen to, horrific abuse, stories of neglect, terrible trauma. I was like, ah! And it really bothered me. So I went to speak to my therapist. She was, okay, this is quite meta because now you're talking to me about, you know,
mm, mm, mm,
this. But to have such an extreme reaction to something, right? I was like, what is going on for me that amount of sort of
mm,
vulnerability and tenderness, which I can lavish on other people. I have 4 children and 2 dogs. There's rarely a day where there's not somebody in my
mm,
lap or sitting beside me
yeah,
needing
mm,
something
mm,
from, but that I balk at receiving it. That's hugely unfinished in me. And I don't, we all need help, right? Always, 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 always.
oh,
But more and more probably as we get older.
mm,
Um, and I don't want to be one of those graceless, brittle old crones that's mean to people because because I can't
yeah, yeah.
figure out a way of being gracious in that. And I feel that there's so much work for me to do. That's the real work for me to do is how to be humble enough and how to do my work. I don't even really know. I'm sounding quite inarticulate because I don't almost know what the terrain is and what the
Mm.
work I need to do is to get there. Um, but I sort of, I tell you that you said, what did you say, Alice? I'm very worked on, and I am, and I work on myself, and I'm quite unarmored, and in my sneakers, not my high heels, and all of that stuff. But I don't really know how to be that vulnerable, to put my head in someone's lap, literally or metaphorically.
Mm. Then that is
Yeah.
no doubt the path that we will be talking each other through at some point when you're ready.
Yeah. Yes.
I want to add one little angle to that. And then for the mercy of this poor listening public who's going to be saying, have they really not finished in an hour? Then we're going to tie up. But I'd love to add a little angle. I think that one thing that can help us to allow ourselves or even to want to be more vulnerable can be seeing that we've been the wise people, the parents, the teachers, the leaders who have all the answers for so long. That maybe it's now our turn to be the ones to unselfishly ask others for help, because then they can become the all wise, all knowing, the ones with the answers, and turn that towards others, us.
Oh, I
So
love
might it not be selfish of you not to go down that path?
that's so mean. Um, it's like beginner's mind in a different, it's like a different flavor of that, isn't it?
Mm.
It's sort of shedding stuff and giving stuff away,
Mm.
service of, oh, you're so good. That's a beautiful framing.
Have
And the
fun.
only way I can leave myself to do anything, right? As I said, I get my own head into
You'll
framing
do it when you're good and ready, I'm
in
sure.
service of other people.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
yeah, thank you,
Thank
as
you,
ever.
Jenni.
You're
Been an
very
absolute pleasure. Let's
it's
wrap
been
it up here, though I know we could go on for hours still. But I know the audience is going to love this, and I'm very grateful that you've shared so openly, so vulnerably, and so caringly. Thank you.
so well. Thank you for having me.